a maximum security federal prison, a billionaire criminal whose secrets shook America's political and financial elite. But he died in a scenario so full of unbelievable coincidences, so eerily perfect. What happened on the night of August 10th, 2019, at MCC New York? In the darkness surrounding the case, the accounts of some inmates who were imprisoned near Jeffrey Epstein become a rare piece of the puzzle, but full of danger coming from inside the bars. And it is these details, seemingly small, that make Epstein's case even more mysterious. Nicholas Tartaglione, Epstein's cellmate. The beginning of an unusual series. After being arrested on July 6, 2019 on felony charges, Jeffrey Epstein was transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center (MCC) in Manhattan, a maximum security federal prison that has held many dangerous individuals. Here, Epstein was not placed in solitary confinement, but was held with Nicholas Tartaglione, a former police officer, whose past made many people wary even of mentioning his name. Tartaglione was a tall, quiet, and stern-looking police officer in Westchester County, New York. But his career came to a shocking end in 2016. Prosecutors charged him with involvement in the case of 4 men who disappeared during a drug deal gone wrong. Their bodies were found on property he owned. The case shocked the public. A man who had once held the badge of justice was now the prime suspect in an alleged series of organized violence. Tartaglione's presence in the same cell as Epstein immediately attracted attention and controversy within the prison, because both were special prisoners but had completely different backgrounds and cases. Just over 2 weeks later, on the night of July 23, 2019, Epstein was found unconscious in his cell with a gunshot wound to his neck. His only cellmate at the time was Tartaglione, who has denied any involvement. Tartaglione's lawyer has also maintained that he helped Epstein and meant no harm. He saved Epstein, he didn't hurt him. Epstein was rushed to the hospital and survived, but the incident prompted an urgent review of MCC's security measures. However, the investigative report found that Tartaglione had a record of violent behavior in prison, including repeated clashes with prison guards. The fact that the two were held together was not only reckless, but also outrageous, especially since Epstein was a figure with so many secrets about the elite. Many people questioned whether this strange arrangement was the beginning of a series of shady events that would later result in Epstein's death and Tartaglione's continued silence. The question remains unanswered, but the name Nicholas Tartaglione, with his unkempt background, will forever be a big question mark in the questionable final days of Jeffrey Epstein's life. MCC's response immediately after Epstein's attempted death. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, Epstein was placed on a special monitoring list, a procedure that federal prisons follow. The process involves 15-minute checks, removal of potentially harmful items, and regular psychological monitoring. But it's worth noting that just 6 days later, in late July, Epstein was removed from the list. No official announcement was made about the basis for the decision. According to multiple sources, staff believed Epstein was stable after a psychological evaluation. But given the serious charges he was facing, and the incident that occurred less than a week earlier, the decision to remove this special monitoring measure has left many in the legal system, and the media baffled. And then, what had to happen, happened. Jeffrey Epstein was found lifeless in his single cell at MCC New York in the early morning of August 10, 2019. A death so simple and neat, it was hard to believe. Just days before his trial, Epstein's case had snuffed out the chance to reveal a series of powerful names. It came too timely, too quietly, leaving the world wondering, was it a voluntary end, or something that left him forever unable to speak? To this day, the answer remains a chilling void. After the fateful night, prisoners began to speak out. Testimony from behind bars, conflicting timelines, and the night Epstein died. During the official investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein case, testimony from fellow inmates provided remarkable details, even blatantly contradicting reports from the Bureau of Prisons and the Office of Inspector General (OIG). Prisoner 5, who was held directly across from Epstein's cell on level L of the MCC, said he could see the entire area from a small window in his cell door. Despite his limited view, his testimony was particularly intriguing. He believed the last check occurred before midnight on August 9, 2019, about an hour and a half later than the 10:40 p.m. time recorded in official records. In a prison environment where routines are highly repetitive, inmates' ability to estimate time is often quite accurate. A discrepancy of nearly 2 hours is therefore a detail that cannot be ignored. The inmate also claimed he did not see or hear anyone approaching Epstein's cell after that point, and said no further checks were made throughout the night. Inmate 6, also on level L, gave a similar account. He said the last check he witnessed took place between 12:30 and 1:00 a.m. on August 10th, significantly later than the records indicate. After returning from a meeting with his attorney, he did not see Epstein's cell door open, did not hear any unusual noises, and confirmed that no officers had entered the area. Notably, the testimony was not limited to those 2 witnesses. The FBI and OIG interviewed 7 more inmates from other floors of the facility. Although they did not directly witness what happened in Epstein's cell, they consistently reported that nighttime inmate checks were rare. Or if they did, they stopped around 9:30, 10 p.m., or a little later, around 12:30 a.m. Several inmates claimed they had never seen regular nighttime checks by guards before the incident. The discrepancies in the inmates' accounts, especially the timestamp near midnight, raise serious questions about the accuracy and integrity of official surveillance records. In a case already shrouded in suspicion, such timing discrepancies add to the pressure for transparency from the federal prison system and the agencies involved. What actions did Epstein take before his death? Final call and mismatched signs before Epstein's death. Despite being held awaiting trial on a slew of serious charges, Jeffrey Epstein displayed an unusually upbeat demeanor during his final days at MCC. According to his attorney and several prison records, he spent much of his time reading legal documents, preparing for appeals, and making frequent phone calls. No one on his legal team or his supervisors observed signs of despair or mental instability. However, unusual details began to emerge on the evening of August 9th, just hours before Epstein was found dead. Around 7 p.m., Epstein was allowed to make an unsupervised call to a number with a New York area code. This violated the Federal Bureau of Prisons BOP regulations, which require that all calls from prison be monitored and recorded. When asked, Epstein said he wanted to call his mother, who had died in 2004. The person Epstein called was an unnamed individual, who was later determined to be in Belarus at the time of the call. The person declined to be interviewed by the Office of Inspector General OIG, but their lawyer confirmed that the two spoke for about 20 minutes. The fact that a call from a New York prison could be relayed to Belarus without being recorded by surveillance raises major questions about the communications control system at MCC, and about how Epstein was able to access the connections outside of protocol. "They're trying to keep me safe," Epstein said in the call, acknowledging that the case would take longer than he thought. He also said he wouldn't be able to call back for a month. "They're trying to keep me safe" comment, given Epstein's near-death experience just weeks earlier, prompted the BOP's Northeast Regional Director to call the call extremely disturbing, he admitted. "We'll never know what happened." Additionally, a post-incident inspection found Epstein's cell was filled with more than the usual amount of items, double the amount of blankets, sheets, and clothing, some of which had been torn into strings. Although the prison said the items were for a second inmate who was scheduled to be transferred, Epstein's access to potentially hazardous materials after the July 23rd incident adds to a growing list of inexplicable errors. All of these details, from the unattended call to the cryptic content to the extra items in the room, are not just coincidences. They are disparate but contradictory pieces of the puzzle that further cloud the picture of the most controversial death in modern federal prison history. In addition, an extremely serious error was also discovered coming from the prison guard position. 2 guards, 8 hours of neglect, and a fake record system. The flaw at MCC. On the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, 2 correctional officers, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, were directly responsible for supervising him. Analysis from the Office of Inspector General OIG revealed a series of unusual behaviors by the 2 officers. They were allegedly sitting at desks just 15 feet from their cells, but spent their time surfing the internet. While they were supposed to be checking in every 30 minutes, records show that Noel was on the computer throughout the night, visiting websites selling furniture and welfare. She also read a news article about Jeffrey Epstein himself. Michael Thomas. The other man also logged onto the computer at around 1 a.m. and 6 a.m., mostly to look up motorcycles and check sports news. For nearly 8 hours, the two did not conduct any checks on Epstein's cell as required. After about 2 hours, both appeared to fall asleep. To cover up this serious omission, Noel and Thomas allegedly filed false shift records stating that they had performed the required 30-minute checks. This is a federal crime of falsifying documents, a serious charge, especially when it involves the case of one of the most closely watched prisoners in the country at the time. After Epstein was found dead, both guards were summoned. According to the indictment, Noel admitted to his superiors that they had missed the 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. checks. Thomas also acknowledged that saying, "We made mistakes," and even took responsibility for his colleague, "I was wrong." She was not. Federal prosecutors argued that these violations were not just individual failures, but flaws in the system. They stressed the defendants had a responsibility to ensure the safety of the inmates during their shifts. Instead, they failed to do so, and knowingly lied to cover it up. The U.S. Attorney's Office considered the case a top priority. Nearly 20 prison officials were called in to investigate, and both then Attorney General William Barr and Deputy Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen were kept informed. The problem of falsified records was not unique to MCC. An internal memo later released by the new Bureau of Prisons Director Carvajal Sawyer revealed the practice of fake audits or inspections that never took place, a common practice at many other federal prisons. The system-wide review raised the alarm about a dangerous practice. Supposedly impenetrable security procedures were sometimes only on paper. Missing minutes and camera dead angles. Unanswered questions. One of the most serious flaws in the Jeffrey Epstein case was the surveillance camera system. This was supposed to be the last line of defense to ensure that all activities in the prison were recorded. According to reports, anyone entering and leaving Epstein's cell from the common area would be in the camera's view. However, this was not as solid as it was claimed. First, the quality of the security cameras at MCC is extremely poor. Even when someone walks by without trying to avoid them, the image is so blurry that it is difficult to identify. If someone wanted to avoid the camera, they could simply walk to the right of the stairs through an area that is out of direct view of the main camera, and they could slip through without being detected. More notably, the camera was not placed directly in front of Epstein's cell, but was angled toward the stairs, creating a potential blind spot. Between 10:40 p.m. on August 9th and 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, when Epstein's body was discovered, the footage reportedly shows no one entering or leaving the cell. But what's remarkable is one small detail in the entire 10 hours of footage. Exactly 1 minute is missing, between 11:59 a.m. and 12:00 a.m. It's a gap, too, even to be suspicious. Initially, many assumed it was a software glitch or a limitation of the DVR system. However, the 128-page investigation report by the Office of Inspector General OIG curiously made no mention of this detail, a puzzling omission if it was indeed a recurring technical error. The fact that the single minute was lost coincided with the midday shift, making the coincidence all the more suspicious. Furthermore, the DVR system was later upgraded, meaning that re-verification by comparison with old data was no longer possible. And if no one kept the previous technical records, that missing minute, whether it was a mistake or a deliberate intervention, would never be satisfactorily explained. In the context of a series of contradictory and inconsistent details, that empty minute was no longer a simple incident, but became one of the key mysteries that have not been solved. So what is the truth about Epstein's death? Let's find out right away. Independent forensic Michael Baden, unsolved contradictions in the Epstein case. Immediately after the Jeffrey Epstein case was announced, doubts arose not only from the public, but also from professionals. To find the truth, the Epstein family hired veteran forensic Dr. Michael Baden to oversee the autopsy. With more than 5 decades of experience, he has participated in investigating a series of shocking cases, including the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and the case of Michael Brown. Baden is no stranger to the criminal investigation world. While observing the autopsy, Baden discovered what he considered unusual injuries. Specifically, 3 bones in Epstein's neck were broken, including the hyoid bone, a small horseshoe-shaped structure located under the chin. According to Baden, this type of injury often occurs in cases of victims of manual abuse. Epstein's age 66 made his neck bones more brittle and prone to fracture. But Baden said that still did not explain the 3 simultaneous fractures. Speaking to the media, Baden stressed, "I have never seen such a case in the last 50 years. However, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, headed by Dr. Barbara Sampson, maintained its original conclusion in the case that Epstein made his own choices about his life. Sampson said the conclusion was based on all the evidence at the scene, Epstein's psychological history, the autopsy results, and the investigation by authorities. Although Baden was present at the autopsy, he did not participate in writing the official report, and his judgment was not enough to change the direction of the investigation. This contradiction immediately became the basis for a wave of widespread skepticism. Many public figures expressed disbelief in the authorities' conclusions, saying that this death came too soon, when Epstein was facing the risk of revealing a list of influential figures who had been associated with him. Baden also pointed out many details that have not been clarified. Too many inexplicable omissions, he commented in an interview at the end of 2019. To date, no federal agency has reopened a murder investigation. But the shadow of the case still hangs over Epstein, a case in which each dusting off makes the truth seem further away. Michael Baden's findings are not conclusive, but they do raise the necessary question. What happened behind bars in that 9th-floor cell that fateful night? Other related details. The missing piece of the painting in the Jeffrey Epstein case. The U.S. Department of Justice is conducting a comprehensive internal review of the Metropolitan Correctional Center (MCC), where Epstein died in solitary confinement. Rather than allaying doubts, the move has only added to them, especially since a number of key details appear to have been hidden or poorly presented. A key part of the mystery lies in Epstein's court documents. In particular, the list of individuals who visited the private island of Little St. James, which is believed to have been the center of his alleged abuse. While some of the documents have been declassified in batches, many prominent names have been blacked out, or entire sections have been sealed for sensitive reasons, with no clear criteria. Many investigative reporters and legal experts say the level of secrecy involved is not simply about protecting privacy. Most notable was the 2023 report from the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General (OIG). The report concluded that Epstein's death was the result of a chain of serious failures, from a broken camera, a guard falling asleep, to a botched search warrant. However, it also concluded that there was no evidence of criminal conduct. For many experts, it was an unusually clean conclusion. There was no reconstruction, no in-depth analysis of the unusual behavior of MCC staff, and, crucially, no mention of the previously mentioned forensic discrepancies. The American media and analysts immediately raised questions. If not criminals, then who or what benefits from the MCC system's total failure, right on the night a central witness like Epstein lost his life? While the truth remains shrouded in a thick fog, the fact that the clues are locked away in secret files further undermines public confidence in the system. The case, although officially closed, still leaves a dark area that no one dares to delve deeply enough into. Public reaction after investigation. Doubts never subside. When the Justice Department's Office of Inspector General (OIG) released its official conclusion that Jeffrey Epstein ended his life amid mismanagement and violations of due process, many expected the public to be appeased. But the opposite happened. Instead of quelling doubts, the report fueled a sense of loss of control, as if the entire system had become a dark theater where explanations were dimmed. Many major newspapers, such as the New York Times or The Guardian, do not directly doubt the conclusion. Still, they all point out that the fact that Epstein, a central figure in a series of files related to global political, financial, and entertainment names, could die in federal custody while the whole country was watching, was an inexcusable failure. A writer for Vanity Fair wrote bluntly, "If the belief in justice needed a symbol to break it, was the moment Epstein disappeared forever into the darkness." In international forums, users began to see the case as a measure of the impenetrability of the elite. No longer a conspiracy theory, but a sense of paralysis. That even if the truth existed, it could still be kept hidden in secret files. The phrase, Epstein case, gradually lost its criminality, becoming a cultural symbol. A symbol of frustration, of cynicism, and of the limits of truth in a world governed by power and fear. On Twitter and Reddit, discussions with the hashtag #JockEpsteinCoverup have flared up again. Celebrities ranging from Elon Musk to Kyrie Irving have posted or shared the emoji "Epstein didn't kill himself." Many media figures have compared the incident to a detective movie, rather than a systemic failure. Even within the U.S. justice system, many former officials expressed frustration at the scale of the chaos revealed. "We don't need a conspiracy," one former prosecutor speaking on condition of anonymity told CNN. "We need a system that doesn't need a conspiracy." For the public, the Epstein case is not just a case, it is a warning. When justice is no longer transparent, the scariest thing is not what we don't know, but the feeling that no one has the right to know. The legacy of the Phantom of Power. Jeffrey Epstein left behind more than a series of mysteries. He left behind an ecosystem of silence. Even after his death, Epstein's name still appears in court cases, leaked tapes, and surprising testimony from witnesses who were thought to have been forgotten. The investigation seemed to have stopped, but in reality it had just begun a more sinister and dangerous phase. Justice no longer came from the courtroom, but from the financial reports, personal notebooks, and confessions hidden in safes of those once considered untouchable. And perhaps the scariest thing yet to be told is that Jeffrey Epstein may have been just the tip of a much deeper web, one where he was not the center, but a servant to forces that are still hidden. As the spotlight continues to shine on the dark corners, perhaps a bigger, more familiar name will be the next to step out of the shadows. And then, the story will truly begin.